we have to do. It's the only way in which we can constitute counter voices against the willful ignorance and deliberate blindness of the frameworks tied to neoliberalism. And they need to be shattered. Clarity, courage, and most importantly, conviction. This is one, especially among our young folk, and that's precisely why I spend so much time with young people. Because I know the older brothers and sisters who went through the 60s and made it barely through the age of Reagan. Some of them didn't think they'd ever see the end of it. That they're very world weary because the kind of organizing, mobilizing, the kind of work that needs to be done, the kind of courage and sacrifice is going to be disproportionately on young people, just like the volunteer army, disproportionately working class and poor. It's going to require tremendous energy to fight the war that the elites are cheering. And that's where I think the kind of real kind of democratic renaissance, or kind of democratic awakening needs to take place. See, I was just in California a few weeks ago with the students at UC Berkeley. The most significant student demonstration since 1964. That's the kind of thing that gets me excited. San Francisco State 2 days ago. In Germany, shut down the whole metropolitan complex. Paris, the same thing. The young folk beginning to come alive again. The legacies of Martin and Heschel, Cesar Chavez in the States. And it's going to be connected to what's going on in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez has significant status, given his willingness to stand in front of the American empire and say, we're keeping track of that base in Colombia. We know the history. We're concerned about Morales. We're concerned about what's going on with Lula in Brazil and others. You see, that we can create a collective wave, always cracked, always in need of criticism, but a collective wave in the face of the neoliberalism, be it Keynesian or be it Friedmanian. And do we have a chance? We don't know. Really don't know. I don't believe in any kind of predetermined victories at all. Again, I'm the bluesman. Bluesmen have been down so long that down don't worry me no more. That's why I keep keeping on. See, I don't believe in optimism either. I'm not an optimist at all. I'm not a pessimist either. I'm a prisoner of hope. A prisoner of hope is qualitatively different. Prisoner of hope says with Curtis Mayfield, keep on pushing. Stay in motion, stay in momentum. If you're lucky, you'll create a movement. The movements are rare, difficult. But when the movements are not in place, stay in motion. Keep your momentum going. Keep the flow and the language of your truth. Keep the flow of the music of your truth. Keep the flow and the organizing of your truths. All of them fallible truths. That is where hope comes from. And that's why I was very, very critical of my dear brother Barack, who borrowed the language of not just the black freedom movement, but the best of the black church when he talked about the audacity of hope. Nothing to do with American optimism. Don't wed. The talk of hope goes back for me to Amos and Micah and Jesus and Mohammed on up to Martin, with American exceptionalism that's tied to cheap optimism. That tradition of hope has nothing to do with America's version of cheap optimism tied to American exceptionalism. We are the city on the hill. We are the people who have no limits, have no constraints. You hear it every January. We have no problem we cannot solve because what? We are Americans. That's a lie. You're going to die. You got to deal with dread and anxiety. You got to deal with illness. Yes, there's always problems we cannot solve. In this sense of being somehow outside of time, outside of history, outside of memory as it relates to the underside is nothing but a sign of national adolescence, a refusal to grow up no matter how one grows wealthy and grows powerful, a refusal to grow up. Almost like the American Hamlet, Blanche Du Bois, and that white literary blues man born in Jim Crow, Mississippi. He was born by the name of Thomas Lanier, but he's known to the world for the genius that he is, Tennessee Williams, in a streetcar named Desire. Tell us about that American Hamlet, that Blanche, that what? Refuses time, refuses history, refuses memory, refuses mortality, just want to live in a world of make-believe with the Chinese lantern and the lights always on. And what happens? Just like Cheney at the election, she ends up in a wheelchair. This is what happens when you fall into myths like American exceptionalism. We trotted out the same myth in Oslo. My story is possible only in America. Now, Brazil had a president who dropped out of school in the 5th grade. You think a 5th grader would ever make his way to the White House? No! Pakistan, Chile has already had a woman president. White House had a woman president yet? No. America's not on the cutting edge. Well, we've been trying. No, it's wonderful that you are able to engage with social mobility. That's magnificent. You don't have to subscribe to American exceptionalism. Only in America your story is possible. That's not true. Other people have tremendous stories. They got folk from the Dalit people and untouchable people at the highest level of the branch in India. We don't need to lie to ourselves in order to be true to the best of who we are. That's going to be our challenge. Can we meet it? We do not know. But one thing is necessary. We need deep conversation, dialogue, overlap, alliance, critical engagement, loving and respecting each other enough to take each other so seriously that we agree, disagree, but begin also to acknowledge that the best of who we are can be brought together in such a way that poor people's suffering is not rendered invisible. That's why I like to work with this brother. That's why I'm here tonight. I'm sure that's why you all are here tonight. Thank you so very much for listening to me. And we're going to have a good time for questions, good time for queries, good time for dialogue, good time for commentary. Indeed. Thank you so very much, brother. Thank you, Sister Patricia. But do not hesitate to jump right in. I can just choose it.